There we go.
Here we go. Welcome to Inside the 18, presented by Pro GK Academy and the Union Sports Community. I'm Michael Magid. With me, 99 World Cup winner, sporting her Union sweatshirt, Saskia Weber. Omar Zini sporting his LAFC gear. And a guy who honestly, I'm not going to lie, knows more about sports performance than anybody here right now. We got former MLS goalkeeper and Dragavon Performance CEO, Ben Dragavon. Ben, what's up, man?
Lots. Happy to be here. Happy we can get this thing going. I don't have a cool sweatshirt. Oh, I guess I have a sweatshirt on.
Yeah, you do. Look at that.
You do. You're good. I could have worn, and I will make this announcement, I could have worn my USC sweatshirt.
Oh, it's official now? We can say it?
Is that official?
Say it on the air?
It's official. I mean, Jane posted a photo of us at our spring game, so
I saw that.
It's official, yes-ish. We haven't announced it.
Congrats.
Honestly, we were kind of waiting till other soccer things died down a little bit, which I'm sure we'll address just before we make a big announcement or anything. But yes, I could have worn the USC shirt. Yes. I look good in cardinal and gold. I'm happy with it.
I worked with one of your goalkeepers 2 hours ago.
Wait, who? You can say
Anna Dickinson.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. There we go.
Wow, look, small world. It is a small world in the goalkeeping
all
community.
In the family.
Omar, have you been working with any USC goalkeepers in the past 6 hours?
No, I have not been.
Well, congratulations. That's cool.
Thanks. I'm excited. It's nice to be back with Jane, and obviously Amy Rodriguez, as much of a superstar as she is. It's pretty sweet.
Sure.
So. Yeah.
For sure. Legend.
Speaking of pretty sweet, I want to just give a shout out to anybody who's watching us on the Pro GK feeds right now. If you're not familiar with what this is not a timeshare presentation. We're not selling you any sort of multi-level marketing products. It's not just Pro GK hoodies for sale, though I'm sure you can still get those. This is a goalkeeper podcast called Inside the 18 that Omar Zini of Pro GK Academy, well, he is Pro GK Academy, has been on for the last few years. If some of you guys are not familiar, we do this every week. We stream it live. It's also recorded out, and it's also on the Union Sports Community, which is a new social media platform that Omar can tell you a little bit about.
Yeah. I mean, just thanks for everybody who's tuning in right now. And I've been on the podcast. I think most of the people that follow me on YouTube know. But yeah, we just wanted to do a little more crossover stuff and get the content on all the platforms so you guys have access to it. But yeah, the Union Sports, I mean, it's an app that we launched. And I think for us, we just kind of wanted to put a platform together that when you're a parent, a player, a coach, when you came onto the platform, you knew that everything on there is all about substance. We wanted to bring something that no questions asked. Every time you go on there, you know you're going to get something good. We have sports performance. We have nutrition and lifestyle. We have coaching education. So many different groups that you guys can join in there. And check it out. It's free on all app stores. And just type in the Union Community or the Union Goalkeeping, and you guys can see it there.
You know, and one of the reasons why it's really cool, I love the fact that you just brought up sports performance right there. And, Ben, obviously this is something that's really close to your heart. So why don't you kind of catch up everybody and kind of what's been going on with your world up there in the Pacific Northwest on the sports performance side?
Business is good, business is busy, and business is evolving as it always should be. Getting more and more educated, exploring new avenues on how to train people, how to keep people well. And a big topic of emphasis for me recently is the mental wellness side of things, and how that is applicable to your physical performance and what you try to achieve out in your sport or on the field or whatever you're trying to achieve. It actually doesn't have to be a sport. It can be whatever you're trying to perform in life. Your mental approach, and actually from a physiological standpoint, how that approaches your physical output is something I've been diving into quite a bit, because it's something that's obviously very prevalent this day and age. It's always has been prevalent, but people haven't really spoken about it as much as they have. Now that I'm in a point in my life where I'm far enough removed from playing the sport, and I've dealt with my own mental wellness on multiple fronts, and I have a lot of ex-teammates that are retiring. They're going through the same processes, and it's not unique to soccer. It's universal, and I think there's a much more open-mindedness to exploring it, on exploring how to get yourself mentally well so you can perform in life better, depending on who you are and what you're trying to do.
Mike, real quick, just
Sure.
Ben, for people who are, I guess, tuning in for the first time to the podcast and may not know who you are, can you just kind of, give people some background as to, your experiences as a player, as a coach, and now in the business that you have?
Yep, absolutely. Went to Western Washington University. It's a small Division II school up near Canada, beautiful town of Bellingham, Washington. From there, I was presented the opportunity to train with the USL Sounders team, and ultimately entered a contract. And so I played for the Sounders from 2006 through 2010. I was an MLS pool keeper, so I bounced around the league a little bit. I spent time in Columbus. I spent time in Toronto, and ultimately ended up in Austin, Texas, playing for the Aztecs, which is now Orlando City. At that point in my career, I was already kind of limping around, and I went into that season limping pretty hard, and ultimately blew up there and lost my contract. It was dissolved, and moved back to the Seattle area, where I started getting treated at the facility that I work at now. Prior to playing, I had a degree in exercise science and pre-physical therapy. So a lot of the information I was getting was resonating with me really well. And I knew there were holes and differing philosophies on how you should be training yourself and rehabilitating yourself that may have helped me more effectively than what I was doing up until that point. So I started going back to school and taking courses on the stuff I do now. Simultaneously, I started coaching with the Sounders Academy and the Sounders U23 team. I did that for 4 years. That overlapped with working with the Seattle Reign FC, being the goalkeeper coach there, and the strength coach, and I was part of the medical staff and the rehabilitation team there. And then that has transitioned into my full-time practice at what I do now with my goalkeeping academy and my other clientele.
I mean, honestly, man, I'm just exhausted just listening to all of that right there, because it just sounds like so much going on. Meanwhile, I'm like freaking out because like I'm just trying to like set up a microphone, and meanwhile, Ben's like, yeah, he's like, I'm trying to figure out how like the entire human body works and the connection between the mind. Before we kind of get into the topic there, Saskia, I know that this is obviously a topic that's very close and personal to your heart in regards to mental well-being and physical performance. You've seen it first and foremost, not just as a player, but also as a coach. Do you want to tap a little bit into that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think we all need to send to Katie Meyer's family. We lost an absolutely amazing young lady last week, and kind of bodes into what we're discussing here today with mental health and everything. And it's been amazing to see how much the soccer community as a whole, not just the goalkeeping community, has come together to rally around the Stanford team, as well as her family and everybody else that's been affected by this tragedy. So I just definitely wanted to make a statement about that. It weighs heavy on my heart. I had the pleasure of coaching against her for 2 years, and she had a very bright future ahead of us. So she will be very, very missed. As far as what Ben was talking about, if you go to older keepers in as far as pro keepers that are coming to the end of their career, even college keepers, when you're coming to the end of your career and stuff like that, there's not enough emphasis that's put on how you make those transitions. And I know, speaking personally for myself, that when I retired, I was just a lost soul. And it's a lot of athletes, myself included, you fall into a depression, a post-Olympic stress syndrome depression, where the stadium lights go out and there's nothing. and how do you navigate that, and how do you find yourself in a new world, in a sense, and trying to create a new life for yourself after soccer. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I think it needs to be addressed by players associations across the board. And it's definitely a problem. And it's not just in soccer. You're correct. I mean, if you look at Michael Phelps and how much he struggled, he came back out of retirement, but how much he struggled with depression and everything. It's a serious issue with athletes. And we have to start young with kids, because the pressures that are on young players today in every sport, and we'll talk about goalkeeping, and in goalkeeping, whether you're not making your club team, whether you're not making your high school team, and it trickles up, those are serious issues, along with the regular day-to-day pressures that all kids and adults have. So it needs to be brought to the forefront, and hopefully with what's transpired with Katie will bring more light to this issue.
And first off, again, as we all said just as last week, condolences to everyone who Katie touched, and to Katie herself, because obviously just a horrible situation, and the only thing that can come of this is to help spark these conversations. Omar, I know obviously myself and you, we didn't play at the level that Saskia and Ben did, but did you, even when you finished playing, you've even talked about the fact that your mental well-being suffered a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I dealt with injury once or twice in my career, so nothing too crazy. And then it just so happened that an ACL tear was something that led me to avoid missing in my life and essentially end my career. But then I started recognizing in those moments of, what I loved as a player, whether it's film analysis and all that stuff, it led me to be interested in coaching. But there was a gap in between there for about a year where I was taking all these crazy jobs that I just thought maybe could fill the void or keep me interested or keep me stimulated. And then over time, I started recognizing, I'm like, I think coaching is what I want to do. But in that time period, if I had guidance, or if I had somebody communicating with me that, hey, this is a normal period of your life where you're trying to find something to fill that void, I think I would have probably felt better of myself, and I wouldn't have dug myself such a deep hole. But I think, in my opinion, those are situations as well where you need your loved ones, you need your family and your friends around you to dig you out of there and give you a fresh perspective. And unfortunately, sometimes, it's just some people don't have that. So I was very fortunate, luckily, and found myself in the position now where I'm at, making videos and content and doing what I love. But it is that little period in time where you need to understand what interests you outside of the sport. And some people just aren't fortunate enough to find that until, years and years down the road.
Yeah, I think Ben can probably talk about this more, but I think one of my biggest issues was I didn't know how to train. Like I retired and I didn't know what to do. I know how to train, but I only know how to train to win a World Cup. I only knew how to train to be the best in the world. So it was either 100 miles an hour or nothing. And I didn't know how to go for a casual run and let the person behind me pass me that was going for a casual run too. And I know that sounds funny, but that's how in your head you are. And it was the same coming back from an injury. Like when I was injured, I didn't know how to calm it down so I could properly rehab without going 90 miles an hour. And these are all parts of your psyche that take control. And there were times that I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to run up Runyon Canyon with like 10 people passing me. It's getting into my head, so I'm just not going to do it. So I think that it's all a process.
Ben, I want to ask you, and feel free to step in anytime you want here, but I want to ask you, do you feel that from a mental well-being standpoint, you finding this love or this passion in sports performance and helping others achieve their athletic capabilities, kind of saved you from having this type of cloudiness going on?
Well, it took a lot of work, and everything I've gotten educated in. I don't know why I said it like that. Educated in is something that I've experienced in my own life and my career. So I got injured, and I had a series of injuries, so I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to learn more about it. I had psychological issues and attachments to my sport, so I wanted to learn more about it and why it was happening. Not a wise me and feel bad about it, but I was curious from an educational standpoint what was really going on and what created some of these things. And it just helped me become a better teacher and educator for the people that I work with now. A lot of this stuff and by the way, that was not an easy process to go through. I went through plenty of dark times, and if I didn't reach out for help, I don't know where I would have gone mentally and emotionally. I've done traditional therapy. I've sought out outside the box versions of therapy as well. And really just kind of, okay, that resonates with me and I want to learn about it. And now I want to learn about it from, okay, what is really going on from a science standpoint, because that's the nerd side of me that wants to figure it out and blend that all together. And then how do I package it and teach it to youth individuals that need this mentorship now more than ever. Not now more than ever, but it's being recognized now more than ever. They need this kind of mentorship. They need this guidance. Their parents need this guidance because there's gaps from coaches and parents and players and physical therapists that need to be filled with communication and understanding, and it's just not there. So I'm embracing that role, and I want to do that and provide that and teach the people I work with and teach as many people as I can, or at least as a group. Let's learn more about it together so we can work on this problem, because it is a very big problem. And you speak, touch on what Omar said, touch on what everyone here has said. You're talking about attachment issues to your sport, and that becomes your identity, and you're trained that way. And when that's gone, what do? It's the thing that's given you positive reinforcement over your life. It's the thing that's given you love because you're so good at what you're doing. And is that who you are as a person? No, it's a sport. That's a thing that you do that you're really good at. It's not who you are as a human being. And that's where I think education needs to be really taught at a younger age. We are doing this sport, but it's not who you are. You need other activities to focus on. You need other activities that give you value and fulfillment in your life. And that's missing because, honestly, I think specialization is a big problem, not only from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint. I think coaches press a little bit too much, at least the ones I have in my area. In my network where I'm at, my market anyway, private school, your grades better be good. You better have extra stuff that gets you into college. You better have 4 or 5 trainings a night. You better do this, and this. And oh boy, it's overload. Then they don't know how to separate it. And then you get an injury, Omar. I got injured. Now what do? I can't do that thing that gave me the love and fulfillment that I had before. Who am I with that? Was that thing even real? It's not who you are as a person. And we all know that.
I think one of the hard things about it's also a team sport, and we have to remember that there's a community there. And so when you're taken out of that community suddenly, whether it be an injury, whether it be getting cut, whether it be retiring, now that family, as much as everybody wants to say the family's still there, and I would say I love my 99 family because we are still, all 20 of us talk every day. I'm blessed for that, but I think that was hard to deal with as well. I'm not going to practice every day. I'm not seeing all those girls every day. I don't have those sounding boards. If I'm having a bad day, I have to search them out. And I think as a team, we have to identify that as well, that if we have to see things, we have to take the time to see what our players are going through, whether it be, they're not just, okay, you're on injured reserve and we'll check back in with you. That's a responsibility of us as coaches. It's us as players and everything to be there, to ask if our teammates are okay across the board. And even after they're not on the team anymore. And those quiet times are too quiet for a lot of individuals.
In youth clubs, they don't have that kind of structure. You're injured, you're out.
Yeah, exactly.
You have no one to talk to. You have nothing. You go to a physical therapist, so you do your thing there, and then you max out your appointments, and you're done. And then you seek out a private trainer to try and get you fit to get back. And then the coach says, "Let me know when you're ready." The structure's wrong.
Yeah, they move on. It's on your parents then, and everything like that. And
they don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
I think Omar had a point you want to bring up.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, something I recently heard. It was like an old interview with Kobe, and Kobe pretty much said like, don't see my achievements, don't look at what I accomplished, look at how I did it. And I think that just offering that perspective to the young kids of like, I know you're being tested by essentially an overload, or your coach is asking you to do this fitness and all that stuff. It's like at a young age, can you understand why, and like what are the steps that you have taken as a young player to become accomplished? And I think if you can develop that young skill of I guess, essentially awareness of what you're doing it and the process to be successful in those steps, I feel like when they're done, it won't be so cloudy, and what their judgment will be so attached to their sport. Because now, in my opinion, this is just obviously a few years now with perspective, but like, can you give that to them at a young age, and then now as they become older, whether it's a new job or new activity or new skill they're trying to learn, they've went through that process as a young kids, and they were extremely aware of that process, and now they can apply that to other things. And I know it's an oversimplification of all that stuff, but just a suggestion that I don't know if any of you guys want to touch on, or it's just me, where if I was given the tools to understand what I was doing, why I was doing it, why it was beneficial, I feel like I could try to apply that as I've gotten older to different things that I would want to get into.
But I think the thing is here, Omar, you're just playing devil's advocate in regards to this, is we also have to take into account the demands of the player, what level they're playing at, their maturity level. Everyone's emotional maturity is very different.
Of
so
course,
you have to take that all into consideration. Like, if you have to maybe map out a blueprint for their maturation as they go, and just give them a little bit more and slightly progress them over and over as they get older, as opposed to throwing it all at 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, or waiting all the way until they're 16 or 17 to try to give them all the tools.
Yeah, and
I think there has to be a balance.
To what Ben was saying is like, his exercise science and all that stuff, and I think as you become older and you are exposed to those the terminology, all those emotions that you felt at a certain point in your life, there have been studies, there have been articles written, people who have dissertations who can tell you what that feeling is. It's not just you. A lot of people are feeling it. They can give you a definition towards that. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, it gets oversimplified, and it's not everybody is learning at the same rate, and not everyone's aware of things at the same time, upbringings, family, whatever. But I think that if we can try to give them that awareness at a younger age, of whether it's therapy sessions or whatever, give them that awareness, then I think, in my opinion, they could try to apply that at a younger age and be more aware of those things. And as they get older, it's not like, what are these emotions that are running through me, but more so now they have an understanding of what those emotions are. Yep. Again, not everybody's sports therapy or sports psychologist in their team, but as best as we can to better equip ourselves as coaches with that information.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be a real understanding, and I got to be careful, and I'm going to disclose it. I'm not a therapist. I learn about it, and if there's problems, you need to actually consult a clinician in this realm. Traumas get built up in your body from very young ages, from events that you don't even remember, and things that may not even be bad events, but they get hardwired into your system, and that might affect how you respond to things emotionally as you grow up and develop as an older person. And there's no real rationale for it, unless you, again, seek a therapist to kind of dive into it. But coaches need to be aware that some of their athletes may respond differently to how they speak to them because of how they've grown up in that scenario. And I don't know if there is that awareness across the board. I mean, I think coaches potentially, I'm not trying to fit everyone to one box, because there's so many great coaches out there. Please don't take this the wrong way. But there are a lot of coaches that need players to cater to them, to fit their style. And it becomes about the coach show, and not about how do we develop these young athletes, not only to be great soccer players, but to be great people and be happy and healthy people. I think that part is just getting missed. It's just getting missed. And it's also forcing the players to adapt to appease an adult role model that they see in their eyes. And now you have these identity issues because, okay, the coach gave me a big pat on the back for doing this. This is how I have to behave and act in different circumstances in life. Externally, I fit the part, but underneath my skin, you can't see a damn thing that's going on.
Yeah, I think that we have to, and again, I'm not a clinician either. I can just speak from the way I handle things as a coach and everything. But we talked about this multiple times on the podcast, that we have to get to know our players, and that doesn't mean you delve in so deep into but you have to be accessible and get to know our players as individuals. I mean, as a goalkeeper coach, you have less players. Not that you have less players, but you're really focused on maybe 4 and stuff, but you have the whole team. And you have to get to know what's going on. And I think that especially with on the college level and on the youth level, there's so many other things going on. I think about back when I was playing pro, and, I had a lot of things going on, but the truth is I was playing pro and I went to practice, and I went home and I watched television, and I went to practice the next day, and I went to a game. I didn't have parents on me. I didn't have school on me. I didn't have all these extra massive external things going on. And that's not to minimize playing pro and the pressure that is with that, or playing for the national team and the pressure that comes with that. But we as coaches have to be accessible. Our players have to feel that they can come up and talk to us, whether it's an injury. How many players have we dealt with, or have you dealt with, Ben or Omar, or anybody that don't tell you they're injured? Like, let's get simple about it. Don't tell you they're injured because they don't want to upset the coach, or they don't want to upset the team, or they don't want to be sat out or something, and they end up hurting themselves more. And that means you're not approachable to me.
And I think,
go ahead, Omar.
Mike, to that point real quick. I think that is when you come in as a coach and offer that perspective of, if, for example, if a player was dealing with an injury and they weren't performing properly or something like that, then I would go to them and say, look, you need to be a little bit more selfish in these situations. If you're not feeling 100% and there's like a slight injury, or you have like a major injury, so obviously deciphering between those two, because if they can just go through something, whether it's like a dead leg or something like that, you could play through it, go for it. But if there's something that's a little bit more serious, then I want to offer that perspective, like you're saying, Sauce, is kind of like put your arm around them and say, look, like, you need to understand that you're only affecting yourself and the image that we see you as if you're not playing at your absolute best. So be selfish, take a day off, or ask for a day off so that you can get yourself right, or get their physical therapy. And then once you're back, you'll be at your best. And like you said, and I think, Ben, you said it earlier, is that they may have been awarded or applauded or getting the pat on the back from a coach who saw them play through an injury and say, hey, great job. I love that. That shows your toughness. And I think that toughness now sticks with them, and it becomes an identity crisis. And what I said earlier is, in terms of like offering that perspective as a coach, is like, look, I've seen this happen before, people who play with injuries, and it makes it even worse. And now, instead of being out one day or one game, now you're out for the entire season, or you're out for a big chunk of time. I think that's what I mean by awareness and perspective.
I will say, don't get on a plane to Portugal.
You
guys didn't get that. You didn't get that joke.
No.
Ronaldo got pulled from the Man City game, and he got on a plane and went home to Portugal that day with his injury. It was a joke. You're still there to support the team. I was just trying to lighten it up a little bit, you guys. God, come on.
Saskia will be opening for me March
13th,
right. Sunday in Oceanside.
I wanted to give a simpler example than mental, but it is mental about the physical, because Ben obviously deals with the physical side of injuries and everything, and how it affects the mental, but that's part of it.
I have a question, Ben.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly. I have a question. Like, what is the difference between mental well-being and mental health? Because I think these terms get thrown around synonymously a lot, and they're probably not exactly the same, right?
I think you're probably looking at differences in severity of what your I don't know, demographic of people you're talking about, right? I think mental health, I think they're interchangeable to a certain degree, but mental wellness, just like physical wellness, is, I think that's a foundational component, and it gives you an opportunity for a higher performance if you have those pieces right. Mental health may be more severe issues that, again, need to be addressed by a clinician. Maybe that's how I differentiate it. I don't know if he has any other thoughts. That's a good question, honestly, how you differentiate those terms.
Yeah.
Thoughts anybody? Because go ahead, Omar.
For me, mental health, like Ben said, it's kind of like your overall mental health, and I think mental wellness for me is like your day-to-day. And obviously the repetitions you have in your day-to-day in terms of your mental wellness, I think that influences your overall mental health. So you have to have the proper repetitions in terms of how you're treating yourself, your self-talk, and how you deal with yourself on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
so that your overall mental health is improved. And again, I've had these conversations recently with some friends where like I'm recognizing all the repetitions that I've had, and Mike brought this to my attention as a young coach. It was like, look, you just don't have the reps that other coaches have yet, but you will get those repetitions. Just make sure the repetitions that you have are good ones. So that self-talk and being aware of how to do self-talk, now you've established a new train and a new repetition day in and day out to communicate with yourself in a way that's not harmful. And I think that applies to your mental health overall.
Yeah, I think and mental health is something that, it's more of a where you're at. It's like a status, and then your mental wellness, I think, may be behavior based in how you decide to treat yourself. You know, and I think it is an important differentiation between what's what, because you have athletes or humans that, you know, if they fit into a normal category, well, what's the metric for their normal? You know, you have a kid who wakes up and you go, how do you feel today? And they say, I feel fine. But what's that mean to them? Are they actually fine? Do they even know what fine feels like? Or are they so used to being in a depleted, fatigued, stressed out state that that is normal, so they do feel fine, which is also a big problem because there's no awareness there. And I see that more often than anything else, that they don't know what good and fine should feel like, or they don't have exposure to what it should feel like, because they're always depleted from a nervous system standpoint, from a mental fatigue standpoint, because they're not allowed to recover. They don't have education. They don't allow to experience it because of all the stresses and pressures that go on there. And I don't mean to keep taking this to a negative spot, but
it needs to be discussed.
It's a very pertinent thing, and I screen for that every single day. With every person I work with, it's not just athletes. I want to know, okay, I do something called a cognitive operating screen, which is kind of a term I made up for my analysis of how are they thinking today? Where are they operating out of? Do they have the ability, the opportunity to even get better today from a performance standpoint, from a rehab standpoint? And if they don't, we may need to address that mental component first and get them into a spot where they can make improvements. Otherwise, we have limitations on that day.
And you know what, that goes across the board. And I'll bring up last week with when everything came down with Katie, just the way handling USC and the team, and even the practice overall for the entire team. Like, at what capacity is the team functioning today? And it was obvious as a group that, you know, it was tough for them to be at practice. And so how do we as coaches address that? And how do we kind of tweak our practice so that we work through that? You know, we didn't come out with a plan and say, well, this is what we were going to do today, and we're doing it regardless. You know, Jane changed practice, and we made practice more of like a day to play, and not really it wasn't really about coaching hardcore or anything like that. It was just, you know, and I don't want to say it was going through the motions, but it was just having them touch the ball and just get out there and stuff. But we have to be cognizant of that. And like you said, Ben, coaches it can't be about the coach. It can't.
Yeah.
It can't be about the coach. And
you don't understand. I mean, well, maybe you do understand, but so many kids that come to me because I'm a safe environment and they're there because they have some problems or they're injured, won't tell their coach because of the fear, the repercussion of the coach.
Yeah.
And the coach has instilled fear, and maybe they have way too much power. And that's, I think, also a big problem. Some of these coaches have too much power and influence over these kids' future, which also affects the parents' response to how the coach responds to the kids, because everyone has a fear that if my kid doesn't do exactly what this person says, they won't get to where they want to go. And that I see is a really, really big problem, especially where it's just too much. And it's yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ben, I've a question here, and this is just for everybody here, because I'm just kind of like brainstorming here and just thinking about like how the way we deal with injuries, right? You know, people used to wait until it's the micro versus the macro, and they would wait until the massive ACL tear before they did anything about it. And now then it became all about injury prevention rather than dealing with rehabilitation, but more about preventing that injury from ever happening type of a thing. Are we getting to a point now in the performance world where people are starting to think, you know, what we're talking about mental wellness? Well, let's take care of the micro, you know, the macro, so that we don't have to deal with that one specific, you know, incident that might kind of, you know, lead to a disastrous situation.
Well, I would like to say Sorry, go Ben.
Oh, I think there's complete awareness of that now, but there's not a lot being done, with that because I mean, when I first started doing this little job that I created, people wanted to come for me for speed and agility and strength and all this kind of stuff. And I go, cool, okay, how much are you training? Well, I'm training 4 nights a week, plus I have 2 goalkeeper sessions, plus I have 2 games on the weekend. Like, okay, so when do you want to fit this in? When can we possibly fit this in? Oh, your season also goes the entire year. Okay, so you get no breaks. Okay, so what can I do on my end to help you the best? Maybe just teach you about your body awareness, how to prepare yourself to do what you need to do, and really, really learn how to recover well, because your coaches don't want to train less. And I think this would be a lot more effective from a team aspect if you train less, maybe do some at-home work, or give these kids some opportunity to recover mentally and physically from what they're doing, and have a little bit more of an off season so these 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds can get in the gym and get stronger and tolerate what they're being asked to do. They're being asked to train like professional athletes without the resources, and they're growing.
Yeah, I've infuriated on the club level, which I left club, partially for part of these reasons, but for me to coach the way I coach and to have that connection with players and to have a player get hurt. And I've looked at the head coach of the team and said, I'm pulling her. First of all, it's practice, but I'm pulling her. You know, I really think she hurt herself. And to be questioned, well, can she not just finish out the practice and stuff like that by a coach? And then for the coach to question the child in front of her team, right? I'll never forget this, and be like, can you not just finish can you not just finish this? Can you not just finish the drill in front of her team? So what do you think this 15-year-old kid's going to do? Yeah, coach, I can finish it. Right? So, and I was infuriated. I'm like, first of all, I'm her goalkeeper coach. I have pulled her because I'm the one that was just training her and saw her get hurt. Do not ever question a child in front of their kids and ask them if they can keep going, because of course they're going to say yes, because you just called them out. Ended up that the kid broke her arm.
Yeah.
And finished out a drill with a broken arm. And I was like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. If we don't allow kids to be in a safe place, if we don't allow a child to come to me and say, I really think I hurt my arm, I saw you do that, I'm pulling you from the rest of practice, it's fine, we need to get this checked out. And then I have another head coach questioning my decision and then questioning the child, and it ends up the kid's playing with a broken arm. What does that tell the other kids? You know, what kind of environment are we teaching these kids to grow up in, mentally, emotionally, and physically? And I've seen it happen way too many times.
Omar, I want to bring this up with you because obviously you're in a professional environment currently right now, but it's also a little bit of a developmental environment because it's a second team environment and you do have academy kids that come up. How important from a mental well-being standpoint is it when you give information, how you give that information, who's around when you give that information, et cetera, et cetera?
In terms of what this, I mean, the mental
in terms
health
in terms of their mental well-being, because the thing is that, you know, what Saskia was calling out right there is like, it was about when this information is being given, and that information was being given in front of a group of people, this putting the person in an insecure situation. It actually might have even affected their physical performance, Ben. They might have ended up getting hurt more because they were trying to overdo it, overcompensate, because they were trying to prove that they could keep going.
I actually don't think her arm, was it her wrist or her arm? I don't think her wrist was broken at that point. But I think that staying in, and I said, no, there was an argument. I think it ended up breaking. And because of the way she was performing and the way she was trying to protect it, it just was a cluster. And I'm still mad about that. That was like 5 years ago, and I'm still mad about it.
Yeah, well, you're talking about compensation too, and athletes are the best compensators in the world. They can get things done from depleted states that other people just can't get it done, and they can still be effective in their sport. It's really, really fascinating. It's really cool. But they also have ticking time bombs everywhere. And if you keep pushing too much, you know, that compensation doesn't really work out the way you want it to because of what's going into your body, the forces that are going in, or the expectations that your body has, and it doesn't have whatever output it needs at that time. You get something injured. It's no different psychologically.
Yeah. Oh, good point, Ben.
They're compensating mentally as well until they break. And you know, I haven't spoken too much on Katie right now because I want to be extremely respectful to her family, and I don't have enough information on how everything went, and it's not my place. But externally, she looked the part. She captain Stanford. Externally looks great, socially looked confident, and that's another example of. I don't want to get into specifics because I don't know, but
right.
It's not uncommon for this to happen, and it's something that again that we need to address and have awareness of at least to start off with.
Yeah.
I think Mike, to your question, I think now that I've kind of thought about it a little bit more, I think
sorry to put
for
you on the
example,
spot right there like that. So.
No, it's okay. I think we've all been through. I mean, a conversation that we can all kind of relate to is having that realization with the second goalkeeper or the goalkeeper who's competing for that number one job that they're now the number two. And I think something in terms of communicating to them, recognizing that the psychological component of them essentially being the number two now, how that will affect them day in and day out in training. So for me, it's having those conversations one-on-one and just being blunt and honest. It's like, look, you're not the number one. However, there's two ways that this can go. One, you can decide that, hey, that's it. I'm mailing it in. I'm just going to be physically available for the team, but mentally I'm going to be checked out, and I'm not going to take things as seriously, which again, at the end of the day, being selfish, that's only going to make you look worse. And when the time comes to make that decision, if you could be the number one for us, we're going to say, this person's been training really, really badly and really poorly over the years or the last few weeks. It's just not, we can't have that.
Right.
Or psychologically, you step up to the plate and say, you know what? Whether I'm the starter, whether I'm not, I'm going to contribute the same exact way as if I was a starter, so that, again, I feel good and I'm getting those repetitions day in and day out. Psychologically, I'm there, and then physically, I'm there. But at the same time, too, when the coaching staff decides, hey, this goalkeeper's not available, are we comfortable to put this goalkeeper in? We say absolutely, because you've showcased to us every single day that you're ready to go. But it's interesting, those mental components and how quickly, for me at least, it goes from, okay, you're not the starter, and we're going to make that decision known, and we're going to, post the starting lineup in front of the whole team. Maybe I should have a conversation with the other side. Hey, we're starting this goalkeeper today, so that's not the first time you're seeing that. And again, that's just like we talked about it earlier. So it's like massaging those relationships just a little bit, because they mean so much. You don't want to lose somebody psychologically in the first few weeks, because if you do, you don't have them the whole season. And that's just crazy how those two things are always so tied together.
Yeah, but I think the players, I mean, listen, we're taking accountability as coaches, but I think the players need to take some accountability here as well. And it is how you handle it. Look, you're talking to the queen of the number two spot for 10 years. Okay. So, but part of that, I have always said, I have the utmost pride in who I was and what I did. And Bri and I are incredible friends. And I know I made Bri better because of it. And I know she made me better because of it. But I also know I made the team better because of my attitude and the way I handled being number two. And my team knew that if I had to go in, or when I went in, there was no drop in level. There was no drop in trust. I wasn't, I didn't sit on the bench not engaging or like bringing my morale of my team down because of my own personal, I want to play, and those are the decisions. But part of that came, and you're right, Omar, from conversations I had with Tony and Lauren Gregg and stuff. And this is how we see you. And we see you as number one and number one. Bri has more experience. Bri is starting. And it's having those individual conversations with the player as well. And players that are listening out there, it is your choice how you accept that, how you accept going from number one to number two, or how you accept being number two. Are you going to be a burden on the team? Are we going to have to baby you? Are we going to have to massage you? Or are you going to step up and realize that you're just as integral and just as much of a part of this team as anybody else is?
For sure.
I think there's something here that we haven't touched on yet, and I kind of want to touch on this right here. And that we're talking about in regards to the mental well-being of the athletes. But I think a lot of the scenarios that I've experienced, either myself as a player or as a coach, is because of the mental well-being of the coach as well too, and where the coach is coming from. And I personally think ourselves as coaches, we don't do enough work on ourselves. We're always talking about the athletes, but we don't look inside and see, okay, how did my day and the way I lashed out at these kids because of what's going on with me right now affected them long term because of what I did, because they misconstrued this, or they took this too literally, or whatever. And Ben, how can we help as coaches to be a little bit more humble and realize that we might be part of the issue as well too?
Well, you're talking about social human interaction. Everyone's got a day that they have. Everyone's got a personality. They've got a history, and how they respond to those things are individualistic. But at least having that awareness that, yeah, even when I come home to my wife, I had a tough day. I got to take the time out and go, okay, get myself together. She doesn't need what I dealt with today brought home. Just like these players don't need that brought to their practice, because that's not the point. Absolutely. And mental wellness, again, doesn't just apply for the athlete, it applies to every human. We gotta work on it and be okay with working on it. It's part of our skill set development as people. Because you can't be having emotional reactions at kids because you had a tough day. That's a no. It's a no-go, yeah. Right? It is. Yeah. I mean, the kids will remember it. This stuff, you're developing not just a human performance machine physically, you're developing a human performance mentally too, from the mental side as well. And they look up to this environment. They look forward to it all day. They're in school, and then you come and you bring your negative thunder. Man, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
And it lasts.
Ben, to your point, though, I think that's my goalkeeper coach, and when I was younger for the Galaxy, he was, Air Force. He had that background. So again, their norm and how they deal with things is completely different to how I was raised. And I mean, the biggest one that I remember, and I'll still remember to this day, is I dove wrong on the ball in the goalkeeping activation, and my pinky was completely dislocated, and I could see the white on the bone, and it was like with the Vapor Grip 3s, those gloves where the pinky's kind of detached. So my finger was already detached by itself, and then I dove into the ground. I dove over my body. I go over to the athletic trainer. She takes off my glove. She pops my finger back in place. She tapes it up. So psychologically, and how I was raised is, okay, something bad happened. That's it. You're done for the day. So I sat on the bench and I said, okay, I'm done. I'm thank God. Nothing's broken, but I'm back to normal here. They taped it up. He walks over to our trainer, asks Natasha, so is his finger okay? She's like, yeah. She's like, he's like, so can his finger get any worse? And that they popped it back in, now that you've taped it. And she's like, no, it can't get any worse now. It's popped back in, it's taped. He's like, okay, so he can train. And she said, well, I mean, yeah, but I prefer him not to. So he can train. And she's like, yeah, essentially, yeah, he can. So then, he's like, get up. So psychologically, I'm like, this is so foreign to me. This is so new to me because I was raised differently. And then I go into goal, and he's standing behind me, and I can feel this presence behind me, kind of just like, oh my God, he's about to drop something on me. And he was like, Omar Zini, today's the day you become a man. These little injuries they don't affect you. You need to become a man today. And again, I at a young age, I was kind of like, this is really strange. I've never had this before in my life. But as I've gotten older, and now that to Mike's question, I'm recognizing and having more empathy in those situations of like, oh wow, okay, so yeah, you came from that Air Force mentality where a slight little nick is not going to keep you out of the game or keep you out of training, and it's going to build mental toughness and mental fortitude. And like you said earlier, Ben, is like us as athletes, little nicks like that, we can go through those things and still perform at a high level. So I think, again, a lot of those young kids, to kind of summarize everything, is that a lot of these young kids don't have that perspective that I'm having 15 years later, where these kids are having to reconcile those things in the moment, and they don't have the opportunity sometimes to have that perspective or awareness of what that person's been through. So yeah, Mike, to your question, I think we do need to do a better job of not throwing one grenade to somebody else.
I think we're talking about a couple different things, though.
Yeah.
Because there is a requirement in goalkeeping to have a certain level of aggression to do what you need to do safely. If you're jumping and diving on the ground or diving through someone's feet or come out to block, you got to do it with a certain mentality for your own safety to perform the task well. So there is an element of toughness and pain tolerance that you're gonna have to accept, because you're choosing to go and do these things. I mean, goalkeeping really isn't intelligent. I mean, it's certainly fun, but you're throwing your body around. But from a health standpoint, it's not good. But that potentially is to push you for a certain level of toughness to to perform your task well. Mental health and how. I think on a more advanced level, people are getting, I don't want to throw the word abused around, but creating scenarios that are just unhealthy is a bigger issue right now. Am I doing a job? Okay, job of
No.
Yeah,
I
get it.
see what you're saying. I see what you're saying right there.
I
Because
feel
think,
like devil's advocate wise, Omar, is like, where does that end? Like, where is the cutoff? Okay, so you dislocated your finger and it broke back in, and then a trainer said, I think you should probably sit out. And then the coach said, hey, you're going to be a man today. Where's that end? Like, and I'll give you an example. College, there was a ball, it hit off the crossbar, and it was bouncing in front of me, and I was on the ground because I dove back, it hit the crossbar, and then I was getting up to get it, and somebody side volleyed my face and knocked me out. And the ball actually ended up in the back of the net. And it was against our rival. Knocked me out. I was out, right? And I'll never forget, I woke up, I came to quickly, and my coach leaned over me and said, are you okay, or is your ego hurt? Said to me, flat out. Yeah, because it was against our rival mama. Yeah, I'll never forget it. And I, of course, was like, no, I'm okay. Side volley, knocked out in the face, to the jaw, everything, concussion protocols, which are in place now. But that is the answer. So to me, so tough. Oh, no, I'm tough. This is against our rival. I'll keep playing, right? That's ridiculous. So where is
that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we've also all been in situations, I can just even give, when from a competition standpoint, I've had the situation where I've broken my nose and I came back in because I don't want to lose my spot. I don't want to lose my spot to the person behind me. And I think that if I get out and I get out, and then I'm out for a few days or whatever, that they could overtake me or whatever. And that's my own insecurity. So that's a mental well-being thing that we need to talk to players in regards to, like, is that?
I mean, I agree. Listen,
it's such a fine line.
There's a fine line. I agree that there are certain things. Look, the last game I played was for the Senators game in DC. It's a charity game. I dislocated my shoulder. It popped back in, and I finished the game. Why? It's a charity game. But I've been so trained to keep going. I've been so trained to, this is a charity game, and I kept going, and it's ridiculous, but that's where that's how I was conditioned. Keep going, that I can't turn that off. And there has to be a medium there. There has to be a fine line that we have to start players at a young age understanding their limitations, understanding, hey, it's okay, come out, or it's all right. So yeah, that was like 5 years ago. And I still can't throw now. I can't throw anymore. So I just think I agree there's a fine line. And Omar, I probably would have gone back in with the dislocated finger being popped back in too. The buddy tape it together and go, But I think that, my worry is that where do we draw that line at some point? Where?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ben, everything good on your end right here?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. We were just making fun of Omar being so weak. No, I'm just kidding.
Omar's like, but I don't want to go back in.
I mean, look, Ben, you don't know this. Omar, when he was younger, he would throw away his shoes so that he wouldn't have to go in.
What?
Oh, really?
No, I would. I would just leave. I'll leave him at the house. Leave him at the house.
No, I forgot my cleats.
I forgot. Yeah,
it really is. It's such a fine line too, because like to that point, I mean that person, if they were raised a certain way to identify toughness versus trying to find an easy way out because you may have conceded a bad goal, that's how their repetitions are, So I think for me, what I was trying to make the point earlier is like as I've gotten older, having that empathy for the people who are delivering these messages that may not be the right way to deliver them.
Yeah. I want to throw this question up here here.
Ben, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I think, a lot of coaches coach the way they've experienced their life and how they've been coached. So, yeah, you can't fault them too much because that's what they know, and that's how they've achieved whatever version of success they've had, and that's how they've operated up until that point. But that doesn't mean they can't improve upon it, right? So we all have had these same experiences. I mean, to your point, I've been rifled in the face with a ball with the Sounders and knocked flat on my ass and had a broken nose, and I put a tampon up there and kept going. And, you know, I have Schmetzer on the sideline going, yeah, that's awesome. Way to go, Betty. You know, like, and it's okay. That was really reinforcing to me to okay, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to do whatever I can for this team. But there needs to be a healthy progression to that, right? There's a spectrum to that where you can push a kid, but you need to have a awareness of where those limitations are, at least, I think, and where you should draw a line, as you said earlier, and go, okay, we're going into an unhealthy zone here.
Yeah.
I want to bring up this question right here, because this is a really good question from Eric Lee right here, and this is because we're talking about mental well-being right here, and fear is such an important part of mental well-being. And Eric asks, how do you overcome the fear of bumping heads with other players when trying to catch corner kicks or crosses? Now, Eric, if you want to put privately in the chat, you know, if this is from an experience that you had, maybe you got injured, and now you've got the fear of coming back in for those crosses. Anybody want to delve into this?
I would say that it's not. I can take it to a different place about not necessarily bumping heads, but the fear of actually getting injured and coming back is a real situation. And when I blew my ankle in college and stuff like that, and I had ankle surgery, and just coming back from that and engaging again, it's takes a bit, and I kept replaying in my head that pain and going up for a cross and landing wrong and blowing my ankle again and everything. And I actually went to a sports psychologist to work through it. And these are times where I would go, this is a clinical issue, because there's an like embedded fear in me that I'm going to get hurt again. And that, like, playing that over and over again, instead of playing the positive, coming out for the cross, getting it, being safe, hitting a 50-yard ball, and then I get an assist, instead of playing that over and over in my head, I'm playing going up for a cross, landing wrong, and blowing my ankle again. And so I had to actually go to therapy and work through those things and retrain my mind and the pictures I was putting in my mind to get through that. And so those kind of fears are real. And you have to work on that. Ben would know that as well as I do, because this is part of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you're honestly retraining yourself to not use your mind is the thing. Because when you're using your mind, it's too slow. It's slow processing. It's always protective based. It's your egoic thinking that creates narratives about these fears for protection, so that thing doesn't happen to you again. You're retraining so you don't use your mind. And from a neurological standpoint, you know, when we make a save, that someone asks you, how'd you do that? And you go, I don't know. I just, you just did it. That information doesn't even come from your brain. It comes from your spinal cord. You have wires directed from your spinal cord straight to your muscles. It's independent of your brain. Every process that goes on in your brain is way too slow to do the sport activity that you need to do it in. So you need to train yourself to step by step get out of the brain and be more in touch with your body and just do feeling. And that's what you're doing on a injury recovery standpoint, as well as a performance standpoint. You got to get back to how you feel and just feel things, because thinking's too slow when you're on the field. That's the beauty of what I like in my facility, is I can transition that all the way out to the field, because I'll start with the deliberate repetition and get back to the sport. But you have to go through those processes, and it's motor learning all over again.
Yeah, and it would be based in repetition, I would say, because the more you do it and you end up successfully, let's say in your question, not bumping heads, more you do it, eventually then it is second nature, and you're not thinking about it, and that isn't in your head. So the more I trained my crosses and not blowing my ankle again, and eventually I never thought about it again, and I just played. So that would be my advice.
Omar, anything you want to add to that? Or
sorry, Ben, I've been muting you only because when someone else is talking, I hear the background noise. So
I'm sorry. I'm having a nightmare with the earphones and all that, but
it's all right. There's other things going on in the world, so we're okay.
Yeah, and if you took functional MRIs of your brain about when you're learning a new motor skill, different parts of your brain light up in different phases of when you're where you're at in that motor skill. So when you start learning something, a different part of your brain starts lighting up, and then as you get more proficient at that skill, it lights up a different part of your brain, and eventually it doesn't light up anywhere in your brain, because again, it doesn't happen from your brain. It goes from area in your spinal cord and the essential pattern generators. But it takes deliberate repetition to get there. So you have to go through those deliberate reps and intention-based training to get to that point where you're just not doing it anymore, because then you get the neuroplasticity that you need to perform that task without thinking.
Yeah.
And that's where we all need to be. And that's what, fear is a big deal in that realm. I mean, even fear of a moment can inhibit that whole thing, right? So, stepping on the field in front of 50,000 people might be too big of a moment, and their arousal level gets too high, and now they're thinking too much about that, and now all of a sudden you're stiff, and you don't have the freedom in that moment. I subbed on for Casey Keller in 2009. He got a handball outside the box, which was shocking that he was outside the box in the first place, but he got a handball outside the box. Yeah, he was 38.
Different era, guys. Different era.
He was 38, 39 years old when he came back to the Sounders, and he used to stand in that 18-yard box like a statue until he really needed to move. He didn't come out of that thing too much. But he came out, and he handled it because he got beat to the ball or whatever. I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, I guess it's time, and I got my stuff on, and, I went on, and I made a couple saves early on because I didn't have any opportunity to think about anything. And, then I started to feel good about it, and more time passed. And then I took a shot from Dave Yarno. It was like 35 yards out, and the ball knuckled and broke to my right. I got a really good jump on it early on, but I remember thinking that I had it. And the fact that I thought that, and I can deliberately remember thinking that I had it, was too slow, and it broke my wrist and went in the goal. And I sat there on the ground. There's a video of me sitting there with my gum sticking out of my mouth. I'm like,
Yeah.
I effed that one up, didn't I? But the thinking process is just too slow for what you need to do, and there's something to be said for that. And how do you get youth developing athletes out of that thinking mindset and into their body and more just kind of feeling things is, that's the art of coaching also.
I absolutely love what you just said right there, Ben, because I had a situation just a couple weeks ago, and I'm not going to, call out the family or whatever, but I had just done a new session with a new goalkeeper. And after the session, the dad looks at his son and goes, so I want you to remember everything Michael taught you today for this tournament this weekend. And I went, no, that's not it at all. Because now all he's going to be doing is thinking about, like, what does Michael want me to do, as opposed to just being instinctual and just being an athlete out there. Like Saskia always says, just being an athlete.
Well, I always use the analogy that when in club, they would put a field player in. Let's say the goalkeeper got hurt or something, and then they'd be like, okay, so the goalkeeper's out for 2 weeks. So Sas, can you take the field player and train them? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, no, because you just put a great athlete in. They're just going instinctual right now. Let them just do that. What am I going to teach them in 2 days, in one practice? Now they're going to say, well, I'm supposed to do it this way. I'm supposed to do it that way and everything. I'm like, no, just she's a basketball player. Just keep her in there. Just let her just be natural. She's a field player. Just go on instinct right now, because the minute she starts thinking, well, I'm supposed to come out this way, I'm supposed to catch it this way, and she doesn't have the reps in, and she really doesn't understand goalkeeping, it's going to be all screwed up. So.
Yeah, I mean, and like, give an example like Omar. You're a celebrity, Omar. I know that when before you were big time at LAFC and you were running little private sessions, people would fly in from all over the world to come and train with you, and they were like, well, I have to do it the way Omar teaches me. Like, I have to do everything. I have to remember everything Omar taught me and do it that way, because I don't want to let Omar down. They're thinking more about you than they are about themselves.
Yeah, and I think from my experience, you can see it enough times where, like, you speak this like profound stuff and like you say this is how it's going to be done, and then whether it's a cross and like you cross the ball and it goes exactly where you crossed it, but then like they take that as that's permanent, and that's the equation I'm going to use for every ball that I have to deal with. Like a second later, you serve a ball and they do the exact same process and they completely get it wrong. So quickly you learn as a coach, you go, damn, okay, I can't use a blanket statement like for this scenario you have to use this. It's more so, hey, can we like implement? And that's my process as a coach over time, recognizing that I'm not like speaking this like gospel that what I say is always going to happen. It's more of like, here are the technical pieces that I think you should try to use based on your profile, and then from there, the situations that arise. It's never going to be pretty, but try your best to be technically proficient, to limit the amount of mistakes or the amount of rebounds or the amount of like awkward falls that you have. But so yeah, I've had that experience, but I quickly corrected myself to try and make sure that I wasn't at fault for them misreading a cross over the weekend.
Well, I mean, I think we've all matured, as coaches, throughout our evolution, Omar. So I wouldn't be so hard on yourself. I think you're doing all right out there.
But you have to. I think that's the last thing I'll say about that is like, I think working on yourself, there's always that fine line, exactly how you would with a player, of like critiquing yourself, but also giving yourself that space to grow. And I think, over time I've grown, but I've been very, very like self-critical. And sometimes to my detriment, because I'm like, I don't see all the positive things. And you get into, before COVID, I mean, I didn't tell many people this, but I went through like a rut. Like I hated coaching just because I was trying to make everything so perfect and there was no room for error. But then I think putting that pressure on myself drove me even further away from, giving myself the space to grow. And then COVID happened. And luckily I had, a few months to kind of like dissect what was the issue. And it was just that I was striving for perfection, when in reality, goalkeeper and goalkeeper coaching, there's so much nuance in it that trying to be perfect is setting yourself up for failure. And same thing to us as coaches is that when we try to, speak to our goalkeepers, there's a technique and the aesthetic and optic of how we think it should look, but trying to make it always so perfect. Well, like I said, like give that player that mental block that won't allow themselves to recognize themselves making good things or good actions because it's not lining up with the optics.
By the way, speaking of trying to make everything perfect, like we can't even, PSG and Real Madrid are playing right now. Shout out to everybody who knows it's halftime right now and they're jumping onto the podcast right now as we speak. Guys, there's only so much we can do in regards to perfection when it comes to times, and we got to grab people when they're available, time wise. But this stream will be available in continuity, in perpetuity. I don't know the words. You know what I mean? In perpetuity, forever. It's going to be up forever.
There you go, Mike.
All right, hold on. There's someone just said hi. I thought that was a question. That is not a question.
Hi.
Ben, as we start wrapping up here, I have a question for you in regards to mental blocks, because obviously somebody like yourself who works in the performance side, you see this where a lot of times coaches be like, well, they just can't do that. They can't do that. And you try to find a physical way to improve their movement, and then you start recognizing that there might be a mental block. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I go through a cognitive operating screen that I've sort of created, and usually people don't understand that they're even going through it, which is it's just information for me on how I choose to deliver information on that day to the individual I'm working with, and whether that's are they okay with internal cueing? Are they more effective with external cueing? Which generally, if you're doing movement patterns, that's what you should be doing anyway. And I have developed a skill set to go, okay, if someone is having a problem executing a certain motor skill that we want them to do, say they're having a shuffling issue in the gym, and I call these things front axis loading patterns or back axis loading patterns. It's where they put their center of mass when they're trying to go from point A to point B. Hopefully to have a better result at C, which is usually a movement to a position to get set in. If they can't iron it out and have success in the 7 to 10 range, I either do a regression or I actually go and do some strategic physical muscle testing to see how well the nervous system is communicating with these muscles, to see if they even have the capacity to do that on that day. Maybe they're too fatigued to do what we want to do that day. Maybe the nervous system isn't communicating in these positions as well as they should be. So we iron that part out, and then we go back and we usually find more success. I have checks and balances in this department, which really makes teaching that more effective. I don't know. I think that's what you asked. Honestly, I started going.
I mean, you started going, and I started going like, man, I need to go back to school. I definitely need to bone up on my.
By the way, I don't talk that way on the field.
Okay.
It is as traditional as it comes. I may be looking at different things, but that stuff is not effective on the field. It's not. It's more of a controlled environment where we can go, okay, we need to do some deliberate, intentional practice here to get these reps that we need. And maybe you can do it from a warm-up standpoint away from the field, but once we get on there, let's goalkeep and win and do whatever we need to do. All the positive stuff that we like and have success.
Ben, I love what you just said there, because I think it's the same analogy as coach speak, is that a lot of times there's coaches that go out there and they're giving coach speak to the players, and because they don't understand the language, things are either misconstrued, or it's going over their head, or whatever sort of a thing. And it's more about and again, talking about being more about the coach listening to themselves and proving to themselves how much they know, as opposed to making sure that this player is going to get the most out of their session. So that's really awesome to hear that, because you're a brilliant mind. Honestly, a brilliant mind, man. I mean, like, seriously, I'm going to go back and listen to everything you said so that I can take it in once more. But you're right. There's a time and place for everything. So.
Well, yeah, and consider that when you're teaching somebody something, that there may be two massive limitations, and it might be psychological and cognitive, which means they're going to compensate in a way, and they may not develop the ideal technique that you want, especially if you force the issue over and over again. So know when to kind of draw the line on it or adapt. And there may be physical limitations that might, communication issues from the nervous system to the rest of their body that may not allow that technique to get to where you want it to as well. So even if your cueing is the most brilliant thing in the world and you think it's fantastic, and how that individual interprets the information that you're giving them into their body and how their body outputs it is, it's a crapshoot to a certain degree, and it may not work for everybody. So rounding out your coaching vocabulary, rounding out your ability to learn the learner as best you can. And as goalkeeper coaches, if you have 4 goalkeepers and you're doing one exercise, each one has an individual thing that they're working on, that's for sure. You should be able to do that part. We're very blessed and unique to have that number of people we can get our hands on and work with individually and really kind of make positive change. It is difficult when you're coaching 20 people at once. But we have a unique opportunity where I think we can really make positive changes, not only from their technical aspect, but developing these people, because we can get to know them in an appropriate and healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Omar.
No, the last thing I'll say, I think to Ben's point, I think for me as a coach, I'm recognizing that maybe I may not be the most articulated communicator when it comes to certain points. I usually like to have film back up those points. So you said rounding out the way you kind of communicate to players, and I'm recognizing it's not a weakness. I mean, it's not something that I can say this is something that's holding me back, but something that I say, you know what, I think I'm better articulating it when I have the footage to back me up, because what I'm seeing, you may not be seeing it. So it's hard for that person to receive that information and say, oh, that makes sense. So sometimes having that footage to back that up, it brings the full picture for them. But for me, it's just being patient enough to say, you know what, I'm going to hold off on my assessment. Let's watch film, or even bring the camera out so we can watch it tomorrow. And I think from there, then you get those coaching points. And I think it's a lot easier when you go back on the field for the rest of the year. Now you just literally have to say one word, step or shift. And now that person knows, okay, I need to shift one more step to create that pocket for myself. So it's like those little things as well that I think as coaches round out a little bit more. So you're not throwing so much on this goalkeeper, but actually rounding out everything together.
Yeah. I'll create language with people too. I go, that was cool. That was, what do you want to call that? That was sweet. And then we have a word for it. It doesn't, I mean, if they understand it, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's language is funny because, there's only, our language isn't too complex, and how people interpret words is completely differently. And you can take that to a pretty broad scale, especially politically this day and age. People are interpreting information in so many different ways. It's wild. It's just because our language isn't clear on what we're trying to get across. How the person is interpreting the way you're talking to them is really individualistic, and that's another awareness piece too.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think I want to watch the last part of the Real Madrid PSG game, so I think we're going to start wrapping up right here. Speaking of language and performance and mental well-being, Omar, why don't you kind of touch on the fact that in the Union goalkeeping community we're very, very, very big in regards to our pillars, and we have two. One is sports performance, one is mental well-being, and how important those are.
No, again, I mean, that's one of the big reasons why we wanted to bring Ben on, and we've known Ben for so long, so we wanted to just have him on. And again, this is something it's so prevalent, and there's a reason why these conversations are happening. And situations like with Katie and other goalkeepers as well. And mental health is huge right now. So we wanted to create a safe space on the platform, but also to provide that awareness and provide that ability for you to gain a better perspective. And like I said earlier, for me personally, a lot of things psychologically that I went through, but then you actually watch a video, and then that person who's a specialist in their position gives you a term or a phrase that encapsulates everything that you're feeling, so that you can better understand and manage those things. I think is super important. And one reason why we have those as some of our pillars on the platform, because we understand that it's an issue and something that needs to be worked on and get those repetitions.
Yeah, and I love, shout out to everybody who's been posting content in those pillars right over there. Not just the train, everybody who's doing the training videos and other types of content, fantastic. But shout out people like Jesse Goldman, who's been posting in regards to the sports performance area, and I know we had a piece from Dan Abrahams in mental well-being and some other people. So shout out to everybody, and honestly, the people who started the conversation last week in regards to mental well-being on their own, without being sparked by one specific creator. I think that's really, really massive. Well, with all that being said, Ben, if anybody has any questions, or because we've just scratched the surface on this, I know,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there's going to be a lot of questions and stuff. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
You can reach out to me on social media, on Instagram at Dragavon Performance. You can go to dragavonperformance.com. Those are probably the best two avenues to reach me right now.
Cool. Honestly, you guys can reach out to Saskia Weber at Saskia Weber on the Union Sports Community, and you can reach out to Omar Zini at Pro GK Academy on the Union Sports Community. If you have a question or a topic suggestion, at Goalkeeper Podcast on the Union Sports Community. If you want to go old school, contact it inside the18media.com. And if you're still not on the Union Sports Community, guys, you can go to the traditional social media platforms at Goalkeeper Podcast, at Pro GK Academy _, at Saskia _Weber. And I think Ben even has a Union Sports Community handle already. I think it's
yeah, I need to get going on it. I'm going to build it up.
All right.
All right. Well, guys, thanks again. Shout out to everybody who's checking us out for the first time on the Pro GK Academy channels. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.
See you guys.